Welcome to Mythic Albion, a journey through Britain's legends, folklore, and sacred landscapes. I'm your host, Tom, and today we step into one of the oldest mysteries on this island, a circle of ancient stones rising from the plains of Wiltshire, a monument so old even myth forgets its origins. It stands in silence, wind carving through the Salisbury plain. Chalk grassland stretches as far as the eye can see, and livestock graze lazily nearby, indifferent to the 5,000-year-old riddle at their hooves. Stonehenge itself is a stark interruption on the bleak, level horizon, and for centuries, even millennia, it has drawn questions since time immemorial. Who built it? Why was it built? It is difficult to imagine both the magnitude of such a task and the motives which could have inspired it. How were these enigmatic blue stones, each weighing upward of 25 tons, transported across the vast wilderness of the Neolithic plains? A time when the people of that era could not leave behind any written word, but a people on the cusp of a socially complex civilization. And what could be more complex than the first henge monuments? Throughout the ages, rain, frost, wind and snow have worked strange hollows into the crevices of sandstone. Yet many of the stones remain standing today from whence they were first erected, bearing the marks of the tools which shaped them so long ago. The builders, much like the people of that time, left no writing, no answers, but stories we have. Merlin and the King. Archaeologists may have their ideas about how and why Stonehenge was built. Legend has another story, one that involves Merlin of Arthurian lore. In the 12th century, Geoffrey of Monmouth gave us one of the earliest myths. According to him, the stones once stood in Ireland as the Giants' Dance, a sacred healing circle. In the 5th century, when the legions of Rome withdrew from Britain, the Saxon invaders came and advanced rapidly across the land. The native British pushed back and thus began terrible fighting. The ensuing war was so shocking and bloody that the respective leaders of each side agreed to a truce and to negotiate at a location on Salisbury Plain. Saxon and British generals alike stood in a circle in which they alternated. And when it looked as if peace could be agreed upon, a signal was made, and all the Saxon chieftains withdrew a hidden dagger and plunged it deep into the back of the Briton standing immediately to their left. And with such treachery, the Saxons stood victorious and became the dominant force throughout Albion. However, an exiled British prince by the name of Aradius returned from France with his brother Uther Pendragon in tow. The exiled prince did not like what he found, and with a huge army at his command, immediately won a monumental victory against the Saxons. But it was bittersweet. He wished to honour the fallen Briton chiefs who were betrayed by their Saxon counterparts. The broken-hearted prince called for a wise man, but not just any wise man. One might say he was a sorcerer, a prophet, or a wizard. It was said this man had command of nature, could parley with the animals, and had command of the elements themselves. Some say this man was born from the primordial cosmos or had divine lineage. This man was known as Merlin. He told the now King Aurelius of a fantastical circle of stones built by giants of yonder, and thus were known as the Giants' Dance. However, these stones resided on a mountain in that emerald isle known as Ireland. The newly crowned king sent Merlin along with his new war general, Pendragon, to acquire these stones, for only these items would be fitting for his fallen chieftains. The Irish, naturally taking umbrage with this, resisted, but the naval fleet was too vast and too determined, but their most powerful asset was the wizard. Merlin tapped into forgotten esoteric power, and with a bang of his staff scattered the Irish armies to the four corners of Ireland. With a whisper and another thud of his staff, the stones levitated into the air and were moved directly onto the British ships. Once the voyage back to England was complete, Merlin stood on the very largest of the stones and applied his power again. Like a conductor commanding a vast opera, he moved through the air, directing them. He repositioned them where the slain generals had fallen, in a circle, and decreed that these stones will remain as tribute until the end of time. Giants of Albion. Before the Saxons, before Romans with their roads and gods, before the Druids whispered in the groves, there were the giants. Legend states that they were the first to walk the island, that they were the first sons and daughters of Britain. Giants that were as tall as trees, quick to anger, and older than the hills. One tale said that they came from a faraway land, the progeny of Poseidon himself. Another tale says that they were born from a banished Syrian queen who made an unholy pact with none other than the devil. Whatever their origin, it would seem that they had always been here and were as old as the land itself. They traversed through the misty forests, a head above even the tallest of trees, and carved homes in cliffs. They moved mountains with their hands and drank from rivers like wells. They would commune with the moon under the stars and listen to stones. In the heart of their homeland, they built a temple, a ring of standing stones, vast and sacred. Each stone had a purpose: constellation, calendar, compass, and prayer. They named this temple Circle of the Sky. For almost a dozen hundred years, they sang songs no human tongue could shape. They guarded the land and lived in peace. The peace would not last. After 1100 years, men came to Albion, men from a land called Troy. And while the giants were mighty, their numbers were few. The men were smaller, faster, more numerous and wilier, and they brought iron and fire with them. Some giants retreated into the mountains, while others sank into the earth, waiting. Some became the hills themselves. Those that fought to their extinction, and the last giant was thrown from the cliffs and into the ocean swell. But the circle remained, and the circle endured. The wind carried on blowing through those stones. The sun continued to rise and fall, and the stones would cast great shadows at the solstice. If you listen carefully, the song of the stars still hum beneath that soil. A whisper deep from within the earth refers to that ancient temple as Stonehenge now. Some believe if you stand at the centre of the stones on a moonless night and call out in that ancient forgotten language, and call out the real name of Albion, a shape will stir in the black cloak of night. A shadow the size of a hill, and a whisper like thunder. Who wakes me? The Devil's Bargain. Once upon a time, in a land called Ireland, a time before English kings, before Romans, and before Arthur himself, a shadowy figure wrapped in a black cloak strode up a cold and stony hill where stood an ancient ring of stones. Placed by giants or druids, the locals could not agree upon who. The locals called them the Giants' Dance, for the stones themselves were huge monoliths of power, of healing, and mystery. But the wandering stranger in the night was not a man, but the devil who wanted the stones for himself. He came not with fire and brimstone, but in the shape of a mortal, a man with silver tongue and black eyes that gleamed with dark mirth. Perhaps he played his hand, indirectly, of the creation of the Giants' Dance, but he found no children of Albion that day, just an old woman who claimed the stones as her own. He offered her gold, laughter, and warm weather in winter. She agreed to sell him the stones, but on one condition. If you can take them, you must do so that no one shall ever know how. The devil, Amused at the notion of any sort of a negotiation with a mortal, agreed. He raised his hands and spoke in words older than fire. The ground did tremble, and the sky first turned dark, then wept. His billowing cloak, so large that it appeared to become part of the blackening clouds above, bore the great enemy of mankind into the sky. The stones, each weighing as much as a cottage, rose from the earth, spiralling in the air like leaves in a malevolent storm. He wrapped the stones in the folds of his impossible cloak and vanished southward, laughing as he flew throughout the night. Over the sea he sailed, and into England he came. Over large moors, that place that would be called Yorkshire one day. Onward he flew until he arrived on the empty whispering plain known as Salisbury, where nothing stood but sheep and sky. There he lay each stone, haphazardly in some areas and with purpose in others, but meticulously in a carefully made circle. A monument with no explanation. Mortals would sooner get blood out of a stone than the origin of this riddle, a prank to outlast centuries. "No one," he hissed, "shall ever know how these came to be." However, the devil was not the only traveller wrapped in cloak there on those plains that day. A monk hidden among the brambles, eyes wide with awe and terror at such a profane spectacle, had witnessed everything. But the devil caught sight of him at the last moment. Fury twisted an already unkind face, his blue-stained hands curled into claws. "You are a fool to be wandering here on this day, mortal. I shall crush you asunder, and no one will know you were ever here," roared the devil. He took the last remaining stone from out of his cloak, a great jagged thing, and hurled it at the monk with all his wrath. The stone struck the man square in the heel, and he cried out, but he was not slain, but for the grace of a higher being. The stone landed far from the others, half buried in the soil, alone. We still see it today, for it is known as the heel stone. Modern mysteries. Today, Stonehenge stands at the heart of southern England, not just as a monument, but as a mystery. Each year, thousands gather at dawn for the solstice, watching the sun through the gaps in the stones, just as travellers surely have for the last 5,000 years. Scrolls then, phones today, some seeking answers, some for the light. Archaeologists and scientists have been mapping the area, trying to understand the geometry for 100 years. Historians continue to debate their purpose. Whether you be scholar, pagan, poet or tourist, all have their theories and all want to place hand on stone. It is largely believed by educated and learned people that the stones originated from Wales, but while one stone door opens, another closes. If that were to be true, why transport the stones such a distance? A vast undertaking even before the labour required to erect these stones is a factor. How would these vast monoliths have been transported? Why not simply erect this temple in the area that the stones originated from? The builders would have required food and water, someone to look after the children, and a constant supply of hammerstone, rope, antler picks and timber. English Heritage describes the stones as a masterpiece of engineering, built during a time with simple tools before the arrival of metal or even the invention of the wheel. There is even debate among the scientific community of the stones originating in Wales, that this just lends to fanciful romanticism. Then there are others that believe in more elaborate theories, that the designers are Egyptian or even Phoenician. Extravagant notions driven by the discovery of nearby prehistoric graves, filled with bronze daggers, gold, amber and polished stone. A nearby burial mound containing the skeleton of a colossal man, one might say a giant of a man, or perhaps a powerful king, for he was buried with an axe, several daggers and ceremonial equipment including a mace and carved bone mounts. This was by no means all that was found buried here with this man. for there was also gold scabbard hook and 2 lozenge-sized ornaments of sheet gold intricately decorated with delicate lines, which may have been part of this person's clothing. Such a splendour of golden burial that perhaps ancient Britons imported their skills from abroad. In the end, was Stonehenge a temple, a tomb, a clock written in stone, a star map, or an echo to something far older, a story carved into the earth by hands long turned to dust? We may never know who built this or why, let alone what it meant to them. Maybe that was the point. Stonehenge endures, not just as a ruin, but as a living question, one of the oldest on this planet. A place where wizard met prince, where giants once walked, and where the devil once schemed. The final explanation remaining as elusive as ever, a monument that has resisted guesswork and theory for centuries. It is a place where science meets myth and neither quite wins. Whatever its purpose, it remains within the realm of the unknown. There are stories in the stones, if you know how to listen. Thanks for listening to Mythic Albion. If you enjoyed today's story, follow the show and leave a review. It helps more people find their way in the mist. Next time, we'll head east to the marshes of Suffolk, where a black hound once tore through a church, leaving claw marks on stone and on people's minds, and further still into the Highlands, where another hound hunts on a chorus of howls. Until then, walk wisely and beware the shadows at your feet.